Hi, this is John Delancey, and you are listening to the Geekcast Radio Network.
Today on episode 158 of the Cinema Geeks,
we discuss what's next for the director of John Wick.
We react to the rumors of the next director with an interest in making a Star Trek movie.
And we give our thoughts on the Disney Takeover.
All that and more coming up on this week's episode of the Cinema Geeks.
That's right, we are here with episode 158 of the Cinema Geeks, and today we're giving you our thoughts on some news and some headlines in relation to the movie world. There's been a lot of big movie news lately, so that'll give us a chance to kind of comment on that, as well as some other headlines and different stories that we dug up that we might think some of you might find interesting out there in the geek world that love movies. So we're gonna do a movie episode, or a movie news episode. We kind of put this on Twitter out I don't know, a couple weeks ago to see if anybody was interested in us kind of getting back and doing some news here and there, and there were some people that thought that would be interesting, so we're gonna do a few, sprinkle it in here and there and see what you guys think, and if you like it, maybe we'll do it once a month or something of that nature. We'll have to see how it goes. But I am not alone today, as you heard in the introduction. I am Optimist Solo, but joining me today is Hard Candy Mandy. Hello.
Yo.
And Movie Revolt Dan. Hello.
Hail Disney.
Yes.
That's not the new greeting we need now, is that not?
You got to get on board or get out of the way, I think, is their slogan. As I'm sure a bunch of other studios are now trying to figure out how they're going to navigate these waters. So we will get to that in a little bit. Matt for the Ascent not with us today, but we're going to be covering movie news regardless. And let's start off with one of the ones that we kind of teased in the introduction, and let's start in the world of Star Trek. I know there's been this headline's been making the rounds, and it's been growing different arms and legs as far as the rumor mill goes. So I'm interested to kind of hear your guys' take on if you think this would work or not. Rumor about Quentin Tarantino possibly desiring to direct a Star Trek film. Dan, let's get your thoughts first on this. Do you think Tarantino and Star Trek are a match, or is that two polar opposites as far as the end of the spectrum?
It is two polar opposites in a way, but I don't necessarily think that's a bad thing. I know, Quentin Tarantino is a huge Star Trek fan. He's never done anything really within the Star Trek genre, science fiction genre. So I'd be kind of curious in that realm just to see what he would do with that. Not necessarily the first name I think of when I think of Star Trek, but maybe that's something they need. I mean, I'd be interested to see what he would bring to the table. I don't necessarily think, it's going to be Pulp Fiction meets Star Trek, but perhaps like his just, some of the other qualities that he has as a movie maker or storyteller could kind of shine through with that.
Dan, do you think because the other thing that kind of goes in with that, I mean, on one hand you have maybe different styles. On the other hand, you have Tarantino, who has never done anything except for basically his own work and his own vision, etc. And in this situation, he'd be having to kind of deal with the studio and the powers that be with the Paramount, I believe it is. So do you think that is something that would really work from just kind of regardless of the styles, but just from a logistic standpoint of them being able to work together?
I think so. My guess is before he would even get into it, like he would probably set his parameters and what he's looking for before. But you never know, because I think something comes to mind. It's like Edgar Wright with Marvel, right? Where It seemed like that was a partnership that was going to work, but it just by the end of it, it didn't. So who knows? I think I just feel like knowing that J.J. Abrams is in his corner, and I think Star Trek is looking for something in a way that they may need him more than he needs them.
Right.
So perhaps they would let him. I know there's already talked about that they would let him do an R rating, which seems kind of weird. I don't necessarily think that's necessary for a Star Trek movie, but I don't know. I feel like they would give him freedom, but I'm sure that it won't be exactly what he would want to make.
Right, and yeah, definitely J.J. Abrams in his corner, and they said they were even assembling a writers' meeting or writers' room, possibly, if they were, to get an idea together and then pitch it to the studio. Amanda, could you see an R rating or blood and gore or just any Tarantino style somehow in the Star Trek universe?
No, I can't, but I think it would be, I can't picture it. I can't make that work in my mind. But thinking back to the only Star Trek movie that I can remember, when the Klingons, like, came in and fucked a bunch of people up, and then all his blood was, like, floating in zero gravity, I feel like Tarantino could ramp it up and make me scared of a Star Trek movie again.
Obviously, along with that story, there was some offshoot rumors, one of which was apparently coming from Patrick Stewart, that said that he would be on board for something like that. If Tarantino was to do a Star Trek film, that he would be game. I don't know if I don't have the article in front of me to say, if that's verified from a source or things like that. But Dan, does that make it more or less appealing?
Well, I mean, the fact that he looks exactly the same as he did way back when is a bonus. I don't know. Like, I enjoyed the overall new Star Trek universe enough. I didn't necessarily want to see that die. I would be fine if they made another movie. I enjoyed Star Trek Beyond for what it was, and I would like to see what he could do with that cast. Maybe with a stronger writer or director behind him, that cast could really shine even brighter. So I don't know. I mean, unless it's some sort of like weird time travel type of thing, who knows? But
right.
I don't think him coming back would really impact me liking it or not. I'm not. I'm one of the few that never really watched Star Trek Next Generation, so perhaps I'm not the best voice when it comes to that.
Amanda, do you think Sir Patrick Stewart, and Quentin Tarantino should team up regardless of if it's Star Trek or not?
I think after seeing Green Room, I have a different view on what Patrick Stewart is capable of in films. So, yeah, I think it'd be pretty cool no matter what.
Nice. Well, let's get on to one that wasn't in the intro, so something kind of that we didn't tease yet, but did you guys know that there was going to be the possibility of an Addams Family animated movie coming out, Amanda?
No.
You're a fan of the Addams Family, right?
Yeah.
Apparently there is talks of an animated Addams Family movie coming out, and the reason that came to my attention is because there was a news about who would possibly be voicing Gomez Addams. Any guesses? Think Gomez Addams. Think today's actors.
Benicio del Toro?
Nope. Dan, any idea?
I do, because I think I saw this too. Was it Oscar Isaac?
Yes.
It's really perfect. Oh, look how perfect.
I mean, that makes me want to see another live action Addams Family movie, because he looks the part. So it wouldn't just be someone who sounds the part.
You see that stash?
Yeah, maybe a little apprehensive though when I see some of the other stuff in the article, because this animated Addams Family movie is coming from Conrad Vernon, and if you don't recognize that name, he is the one who was behind Sausage Party. Amanda? Apprehension?
Yes.
Dan, is there any need for the Addams Family movie to be revived once again in our day and time?
No, not really. No. I mean, yeah, because once we get the Addams Family revival, the Munsters revival,
and then there'll be a whole universe.
So.
I see a universe coming.
Yeah, definitely.
Amanda, what do you think? I know you're a little apprehensive with that name that I attached, but what about just the idea of an Addams Family animated movie? Need it? Don't need it? What do you think?
Yeah, I would dig it. I like the Addams Family, and I think with at least Oscar Isaac attached to it, I'd definitely be down.
All right. Something else that some people might not be down for, or might be, I don't know. We got the big reboot coming out here in a few weeks with Jumanji: Welcome to the Jungle, a 90s movie that is being rejuvenated with the likes of The Rock and Kevin Hart. A movie that originally featured the great Robin Williams. What about another Robin Williams movie being redone or reinvented? Article coming out here from Kevin Hart saying that he would like to do a new Mrs. Doubtfire. Dan, what do you think? Mrs. Doubtfire with Kevin Hart. Needed or not needed?
Man, I feel like that's like a Saturday Night Live sketch waiting to happen. Man, I'm surprised Mrs. Doubtfire has not been remade by this point, because you think it would be, just as everything is. I don't know. I have no interest in that, to be honest with you. I feel like that movie was so based on Robin Williams and like his performance and what he put into it. Like trying to recreate that with someone else And I just don't know. And like that kind of led to an entire genre of like men dressing up like women. You know, Big Mama's House, Medea, and like I felt like that's been done at this point to death. Do we really need it? Any more of it just because it's a remake? I would say no.
Yeah, I'm in your camp too. I don't see that is something that would be necessary. I don't know if is Kevin Hart the right person to do that. If it was necessary, I'm not sure on that either. Amanda, what do you think? Mrs. Doubtfire needs some more movies in that realm with a different person?
I mean, if it's Kevin Hart, it's basically Big Mama's House.
what
like mini, kind of less funny Martin Lawrence. And
is that what Kevin Hart is?
Yeah. If you put him in this movie.
All right, so you're not on board?
Yay! I love Mrs. Doubtfire. Don't wreck it for me.
Okay, so that's 3 thumbs down, I think, for another Mrs. Doubtfire movie. Let's go into some things that are based on some comics and a couple other things. We teased one of them in the intro, but I'm going to get to one other one first here and see what you guys think of this one, because it has some names that are relevant based on things that have come out here in the last couple of years. What if I told you the director from It from this year and the directors from the upcoming Avengers Infinity War, which would be the Russo brothers, teaming up for a sci-fi film based on a narrative art book entitled The Electric State. I have no knowledge of what The Electric State was, so I had to do some digging for you. But they're talking about this in the likes of Arrival, Ex Machina, the TV shows Black Mirror, some of that kind of more high-minded science fiction. Here's this premise for this here. This is going to be covering the United States, the Western United States, set in the late 1997 era, as far as years go for that, and basically follows a runaway teenager and her toy robot who travel through an alternate reality United States where a high-tech consumer society is in decline. And it's basically based on an art book, so based on several images, and it got a Kickstarter campaign. There is a trailer out there if you want to see a little bit more about that. Dan, does any of that intrigue you, or what do you think of this?
Yeah, I mean, it's definitely original, like new idea. I guess not original property because it's based on something else, but it's weird when you see because that'd be 3 directors, really. Like that's. I wonder, is it like an anthology or is it like have dueling? I don't know. That has me intrigued because I like the Russo brothers. I enjoyed it. Maybe having maybe like you can have more of a science fiction horror execution with it based upon what they've done in the past. So certainly interested.
Yeah, Andy, I don't know if I want to say his last name right or not, but Machete, who was the director from It, he also did Mama in 2013, which was another horror film. So he's done mostly horror films. He has some other upcoming projects. It Chapter 2, there's a Hulu TV series called Lock and Key, which is based on Joe Hill's comic series, and then he also is doing a Robotech either series or show, which is obviously based on the 1980s anime Robotech. So that's kind of what he's doing, and we know what the Russo brothers have done with the Captain America films and coming up with Avengers Infinity War. Obviously they did some work on Community. Amanda, what do you think of this collaboration, and did the plot synopsis that I gave intrigue you at all?
Yeah, definitely. Did you say it was animated?
No, this is going to be a live action.
Yeah, I think it'd be pretty dope. I think the premise there is pretty cool. I'm really not one to I don't know about the Russo brothers. Like, I mean, I like their movies, I guess, but I'm not like looking for Russo brothers stuff. So I'll watch it.
Don't say that in front of Dan.
What? I didn't say anything bad about it. I don't have an attachment to them. Like,
Russo brothers have done some good work. Captain America, good films.
Okay, yeah. I mean, I agree with that. I didn't know who freaking. I mean, I've heard of them before, but I can't name their specific works.
Gotcha. I do like the premise here of kind of this futuristic but also past United States setting. So we're kind of getting a time period that we know, but an alternate timeline of that time period. So it'd be kind of interesting to see what they do and what they pick and choose to include or not include. So I'm definitely intrigued on that one as well. Dan, I wanted to bring this other one up, especially with you on the record here today, because I think you are going to have more knowledge on the source material that we're getting here. And we teased this one in the introduction with the John Wick director and what he's got coming up next. So the article is saying that he is going to helm an adaptation of the supremely twisted Kill or Be Killed comic. I'm going to go right to you right away before we talk anything else. Fill us in on what is Kill or Be Killed.
Well, for one, I really wouldn't call it supremely twisted, but the basic premise of Kill or Be Killed is that it is this guy who is dealing with depression, and like his life is basically falling apart, and he attempts to kill himself, but he fails. And after he fails, he kind of has an illusion, or a demon comes and says that it's the demon that actually saved his life, and in order to remain living, he needs to kill a person every month, and in order to do so, it's just like this idea of you're not sure if the demon's real, is he imagining it, and kind of the path he goes down because of all this. And it's kind of like I relate it to a lot of like the Coen Brothers movie, where you have this man who's way out of his depth in trying to like deal with things and the effect of it that it has. I think it's much more down to earth than it seems. And it's a comic I love. It was my favorite comic last year. It's done by Ed Brubaker. And speaking of Captain America, he wrote the story Winter Soldier that the movie's based on. So I'm kind of excited for what it would seem. It's not like John Wick, like I mentioned. This isn't like a kick-ass assassin. This is like a normal, everyday guy who kind of just is lost. Something like Blue Ruin comes to mind as well, where it's just this guy trying to figure out how to kill someone, and he has no idea where to start, and he just kind of gets in his own way over and over again. But it kind of develops from there. So
is this movie or this project got an early shot at being in your top 20 or 30 most anticipated films for the year?
Yeah, is it set to come out next year?
I'm not sure when exactly it'll come out, but I'm just saying whatever year it does come out, be an odds-on favorite early on to be kind of towards your top.
Oh, for sure. There's actually a lot of comic adaptations coming out next year that I'm super excited about as well, that are off to kind of the beaten path. So and Ed Brubaker has like a huge line of really good properties that would make good movies, like The Fade Out or Criminal, a lot of noir crime stories. So maybe if this is successful, some of those could transfer over as well. So, and also Brubaker is, if you watch Westworld, he's a writer on that as well. So you've kind of, even if you haven't, you've never heard his name before, but you've probably watched something that he's connected to.
Interesting, and I like it too. You snuck in there an early tease for an episode that we'll be putting out probably in about a month's time, where we break down our most anticipated films. So I'm interested to see which comic adaptations you're referring to. Amanda, any interest in seeing some more from the John Wick director?
Yeah, definitely. I like the style, and I like the a flair to the John Wick. So if that's going to transfer over, then yeah.
All right, something else that might be on. I guess setting the stage for films that maybe will be anticipated here coming up in the next year or so. This one actually has a theater release date of February 16th. So definitely could be on the list when we get to 2018 releases. I don't know about you guys. Well, I think I know Dan, but I don't know for sure, Amanda, what your take is on the Aardman Studios and the films that they've done. Wallace and Gromit, Shaun the Sheep. They also did Chicken Run, and what was the last one? Pirates, Band of Misfits. Amanda, fan of those films or not?
I think they're cute. I don't, have like a particular love for them, but I think they're kind of adorable.
Dan, what do you think of the Aardman Studio films, and did you know that they had a new film coming out in February?
I had no idea they had a new film coming out in February, and I do like them. They're witty and it can be really great at times. Like Chicken Run, I think is really fantastic. I think that's them too, right? Wallace and Gromit. Is the new one also claymation? Because I need some good claymation in my life.
It is a mostly. I think there's going to be slight variations where they somewhat include some CGI. The article says it extends briefly outside of practical stop motion claymation and into CGI territory for some stuff, but it's more for just kind of filling in details. The stuff that they do is impressive, and if you haven't ever seen like a behind the scenes or like a making of any of the Aardman films, or if you haven't done any research on them, I might suggest doing that, because I think it would give you a more appreciation or a higher appreciation for the level of craftsmanship that goes into this. And just to give you a kind of an idea of that, in order to support the production for Chicken Run, they had to move into a completely new complex that had 4 studios with a combined size of 4 Olympic-sized swimming pools, because they have to set up so many different sets in order to make this so it doesn't take like a decade to make. So at times they're setting up to as many as like 40 individual sets when they were working on this new movie, because they almost have to have so many production units going on at the same time, since they have to do everything frame by frame, because otherwise it would take just so long. So they've been trying to come up with new and better ways each time to like cut down on the overall production time. And if you kind of like traced through Aardman's history with what they did early on with like Wallace and Gromit compared to like what they did with something like Chicken Run, you would see like just a ton of innovation in it as far as them cutting costs and cutting time down, et cetera, et cetera. So the new film that they have coming out in early 2018 in February is actually called Early Man. All right, and it's supposed to be, like I said, their most ambitious film yet. So this is dealing with an idiot caveman, I guess you could call it, voiced by Eddie Redmayne, and kind of just going through some shenanigans with that. We have Tom Hiddleston, Eddie Redmayne, Maisie Williams, stop motion prehistoric claymation caveman comedy. Dan, what do you think?
It kind of sounds in line with what their style and sensibilities. So, like it's caveman quality. I'm sure it'll have like, your mix of some physical and kind of punny jokes, but it seems more like along the lines of Pirates has some of that stuff as well. So.
Yeah, and to do all this claymation and stuff like that, I mean, they have to purchase a ton of raw materials. There's this thing called plasticine, which is the moldable clay or the putty that they put together, as well as some other things. They said that he had to procure over 3 tons of some of these materials, which is more than like an average rhinoceros, I guess, is what the article says. So it's a lot of work. Amanda, did you know this much work was going into the films like Wallace and Gromit? And what do you think of the ideas of Eddie Redmayne and Tom Hiddleston doing like a caveman, early man movie?
That's a lot of clay.
Yeah.
A lot of room for sets. But I think that it's like a simple premise like their other ones, and they've got I bet you they're going to have some cute little morals and stuff like that to tell. And with the voice cast, it's weird to tie them to a caveman movie. But, sure. I like their voices.
All right. We'll have to wait and see how that turns out. It's coming right around the corner, less than a few months away. I had to include this next one, guys, just because the title of the article made me laugh. Here's the title of this next news article. Ryan Reynolds is playing Detective Pikachu in the new Pokemon movie because 2018 wants to out-weird 2017. I don't know anything about Pokemon, and I don't know anything about Detective Pikachu, but apparently there was a specific game called Detective Pikachu, and Ryan Reynolds is on board with going to voice Detective Pikachu, but Pikachu never talked, did he?
He just says Pikachu.
So I'm confused.
Maybe in Detective Pikachu he says more?
I don't know. It seems like the article, as far as someone playing Pikachu, like, I don't understand why they would need Ryan Reynolds. I don't know. It says he's essentially playing Sherlock Pikachu. I don't know. Dan, do you know anything about Pokemon Pikachu or anything?
I don't, but maybe it's like a Vin Diesel Groot type of situation that they're trying to go with, I guess. I don't know. Or maybe it'll be like some really, truly gritty noir take on it. So...
Amanda, do you need a Pikachu movie in your life?
No.
Okay, I just had to conclude it because I don't know what they're getting as far as 2018 wants to out-weird 2017, but it sounds funny, so I don't know. Is 2017 weird in movies?
We did have an emoji movie.
Yeah, I guess that's true. That's definitely very true. Let's get to maybe one of the biggest news stories to come out in quite some time, because we have a lot that we can kind of talk about with this. But obviously the thing that Twitter blew up about in the last week or so, one of the things, there was basically 3 things being tweeted about. It was like Last Jedi, net neutrality, and Disney Takeover. So let's get into the Disney Takeover a little bit with the purchase of Fox. and what that includes, and let's speculate as to why we're maybe excited, what we're apprehensive about, etc. So, a lot of rumors that were going on. Will they get this? Will they get that? And those types of things. And also, you have to deal with the fact that there's different types of rights. There's distribution rights and different things. Different types of rights that can still hold up things a little bit. But they basically got all of Fox's catalog as far as the movies and everything. Basically, anything that was Fox related, they got from Rupert Murdoch, except for they left out Fox News. So they didn't want that, and they didn't want any of the newspapers that were owned by Murdoch and the Fox Corp, and they got to keep their broadcast channel as well. So everything else, basically, 20th Century Fox is now going to Disney. Before we kind of get into some specifics, just kind of in general and vague terms, Dan, what's your reaction to this type of major merger?
Honestly, it's mixed. Part of me is excited, obviously, because the idea of many Marvel properties coming back opens up a lot of doors. Not even just like the X-Men and Fantastic Four, but just some of the major villains that brings. Like I'm thinking of Galactus and Silver Surfer, and finally those can be done right. There's a lot, because I felt like Marvel, with the after the fourth Avengers movie, is there any place else to go? And suddenly that answer is definitely yes. Tons of places to go now. But I know there's some concern that this is giving Disney a lot of power, and they've done a lot of shady things in the past. I mean, most recently there was a thing they did this year with, was it the San Francisco Chronicle or the LA Times, and like how there was buyback to that. Well, what happens now when they even have more power? I know movie theaters have complained that they demand more and more, and regarding like how much they're taking from their distribution to like how like exactly what type of theater and what theater they play their movies in. So Disney does have a lot of high expectations, but ultimately, 20th Century Fox was going to be sold. And the question of who was going to be sold to. If it was sold to Comcast, for example, those movie rights to Marvel would have gone back to Marvel anyways for characters like Fantastic Four and stuff like that. Or if that's part of it, that's still kind of not sure. But I trust Disney taking this more so than other studios. Like, for example, Sony. I don't think they'd know what to do, and they'd probably go under, and then there'd be even less studios, and Disney would buy up all of them. Say what you will about Disney, but they do dedicate themselves to putting out a quality product. They took over Marvel, and they've done so. They've done so with Pixar. Their animation studios have been putting out a lot of great work recently. You may not love everything they do, but more often than not, it's good to great. We'll get a Cars 3, but we'll also get an Inside Out and Up and a Coco. So I think we get much more good than bad. So I'm hopeful, but there is some trepidation.
Amanda, they obviously have done well with Marvel. They've done well with Star Wars. Do you think that if Fox had to be sold, that this is, even though it kind of gives them a lot of power and almost not really a monopoly, but a lot of stake in what they can say, what they can demand from movie theaters, etc., that Fox, if it was going to go somewhere, at least Disney may be good hands to go to?
I would say, and I think that since they already have their hands in, some of these properties, that maybe we'll get some cool stuff, and we'll get some of these universes fleshed out some more.
Yeah, I found an article that kind of posed a bunch of different things that could happen. So I want to kind of run down each one of these and get your guys' opinions. So these are things that could come from this $50+ billion deal. So one thing that obviously came to everybody's minds right away would be revolving around the different comic properties and some stuff like that. So what do you guys think of the possibility of Deadpool now joining the Marvel Cinematic Universe? Amanda?
He's not? And what do you mean, like with Thor and stuff?
Yeah, like in an Avengers movie or in a Thor movie or a Guardians movie, the Deadpool could show up now since they're under the same banner.
I feel like it would cheese it up or make it too adult. I don't know how I feel about that.
Dan, what do you think?
It's just too much.
I kind of like the X-Men being their own thing, so I'd prefer that kind of stay the way it is. I don't know if you can make Deadpool as effective in a PG-13 setting. So, but I do think there are other characters that may work better than Deadpool. I don't know. I feel like Deadpool would work even in like an X-Men movie. I don't think you would get as good of a Deadpool. I'd rather him just kind of stay within his own thing.
Okay, and we will definitely get your thoughts on which characters you think would work in that. Here's another one that might have come to some people's minds when they heard about this. Is there a possibility that we will get an actual good Fantastic Four movie, Dan?
I think so. I mean, you can get Chris Evans back to play Human Torch, and I think Michael Chiklis even said he would come back to play the Thing, and I thought both of those were actually kind of the better parts of those movies. Obviously that's not going to happen, but I think the sensibility that worked so well for the Marvel films fits perfectly in with the Fantastic Four, and I think they get those characters better than Sony or better than Fox did. Obviously, we can't get much worse than the Fantastic Four or Fantastic or whatever you want to call it. So I really hope so. I really think Fantastic Four could be a great movie if done right.
Amanda, you excited about an idea of another reboot of the Fantastic Four that possibly could be done with people that are more capable?
Who's more capable? What do you mean?
Disney, and they've hit a home run with every comic book film they've done. Fantastic Four has been garbage for years. So will Disney be able to do what Fox was not able to do with them?
Do you think they'll touch it with all the crap that's been surrounding it?
They have the control now.
I mean, if they did, I think that it would be a pretty solid film.
Okay. Here's another question that they pose. Would we get a reboot of the X-Men universe, Dan?
I think it's in the serious need of one. I know they have the Phoenix movie coming out, but I feel like, after Apocalypse, I think they didn't really know what to do, even after Days of Future Past. So I'd be completely okay with them doing it. I feel like, really every actor has kind of done what they can, from, Hugh Jackman to Patrick Stewart. I think those characters have they've gotten to as far as they're going to get, and now they're just kind of repeating themselves. So if they wanted to start all over, that I'd be fine with that. Or even if they wanted to just put them on the back burner movie-wise for a little bit and then introduce them later down the line. But I'm not saying I'd be against Hugh Jackman staying as Wolverine, but I think there are a lot of pieces that could be improved considering where they're at right now.
I think the X-Men is one of the franchises or one of the universes that may be the easiest to kind of reboot every now and then or rejuvenate, because you can kind of just write it into the storyline with the timelines and different things, kind of what they did with First Class and Days of Future Past, where it doesn't become that jarring, and you can even have some play with some of the people that may have already existed. So, and kind of going along that line, and I'll bounce to you, Amanda, on this one, but the other thing was also X-Men related. Not only just X-Men getting a reboot, so to speak, but what about that setting the stage then for Disney to bring on somebody new to play Wolverine?
They would have to. I mean, it's getting a little rough, getting a little old, isn't he? Or maybe that's just how he looked in Logan.
I mean, he said he's done, so unless this somehow changed his mind, I guess. He's supposed to be done. He's supposed to be retired as that character, so.
I just can't see anybody else being him.
I've seen some pictures of Tom Hardy and a couple different people that artist or somebody rendered to try to look like Wolverine, so that was interesting. Here's one of the things that I was most excited about when this happened, because this officially gives Disney all that they were missing from their Star Wars property, because they had most of Star Wars under control, but there were some things that Fox still kind of had their hands on, including the original releases, as far as the rights to that, and certain music that Fox had. Some of the theme songs have not been able to be played in The Last Jedi, Force Awakens, etc., because of the rights to that. So, Dan, what do you think of Disney now having 100% control of all things Star Wars?
I mean, I don't know. The little pieces that can change now, I didn't care that much for. I guess the biggest piece is now that they have that. Hopefully, they can release the original editions on Blu-ray and or 4K, whatever we're doing now. So that's somewhat exciting. But I know the people are like, oh, they can put the drum roll back in front of Star Wars. Like, that was never a thing for me, but I guess for some people it is. But
yeah, I'm more excited about getting the original releases on a higher format than we've ever been able to get them on. So I think that's what makes it worth it for me. Another thing that they were saying is, will this persuade other companies and other studios to collaborate more with Disney in fear of them just being bought out? So, I mean, you got the idea that maybe they're going to be more willing to play ball with Disney when they do want to do some collaborations or work together or things like that. I don't really know if this has much. I don't know if this would be really cause for that. But Dan, can you see other studios all of a sudden, Sony and the likes? I mean, we already had kind of the Sony collaboration with the Spider-Man stuff and things like that. But I don't know, Universal or somebody that would be willing to do more with Disney.
I mean, I forget who has the rights to Namor. Is it Universal? I forget. Or Universal still has the distribution rights to Hulk, if I'm not mistaken. The whole movie thing is kind of crazy. I could see some of them opening them up a little bit. Sony has this, Spider-Man, Venom type of thing they're trying to go for. If that crashes and burns, like I think many think it will, I could see them kind of going back to Marvel and saying, hey, let's go back and do a Homecoming again in some form, because this isn't working. But I do wonder, like I said, like I'm just waiting for like Disney to own everything and buy the internet, and like it's just like everything is Disney.
Yeah, it seems like it's going that way, and they have made some statements already that Fantastic Four and X-Men would be joining the Marvel Cinematic Universe, and that if they do Deadpool, that it will remain an R rating. So they've already kind of, I guess, given those comments about the deal so far. So I don't know. It seems like we're in for some interesting things that we haven't been able to see as far as characters go. So, I mean, maybe the last thoughts here on Disney, Dan, you had mentioned some characters that you might want to see join different movies, different properties that you hadn't seen before. So who would you most like to see all of a sudden join a Marvel film or an Avengers film or that type of thing that wasn't possible before? Or should we just be excited that even if other characters aren't joining, that we're going to at least be able to call mutants and things like that?
That piece, honestly, it's Galactus. That was my first thought, because it's after Thanos, it's like, who else can you go with? And Galactus is the first thing that comes to mind. This gigantic, not a cloud, but a huge man, or not even man, basically God, the size of a planet that eats planets, and it would be the next big threat. And I would love to see how they treat that in the Marvel universe. I think they could really make it work. They just had Ego, the Living Planet, and I could see them actually in that work. I think so much better than I ever thought it could. So seeing them take on Galactus would be great.
Yeah, I think that would be interesting. I think it seems like almost, if this merger had happened earlier, we would have had a situation where the Quicksilver in the X-Men films could have been the same Quicksilver in the Marvel films, that you wouldn't have had to have two different actors and things like that. So it'll be interesting to see kind of what they do going forward. Last piece of news here, I guess fitting, since this will be going out in the midst of the Star Wars craze here with The Last Jedi, but we do have in here some very early box office stuff, and it kind of plays a part into our box office predictions that we made almost a year ago, and we'll be very soon revealing the results of that here within the next month. Last Jedi, Thursday night box office, second highest of all time. So anybody want to guess as to who is the first?
Titanic.
Negative.
Avatar.
Nope.
Harry Potter.
Nope.
Another Star Wars movie.
Yes.
It's probably the other Star Wars movie. Is that our Avengers, I was thinking?
No, it was Force Awakens. So Force Awakens has the record with 59 million on Thursday night, and Last Jedi brought in 45 million in one night. So saying that it's on pace to bring in somewhere around 200 million in the opening weekend. So that'll be a good opening weekend, and projected maybe somewhere north of 500 million overall domestically at the box office. So hopefully everybody had Star Wars The Last Jedi in either first or second place here when they did their predictions, since over 500 million would put it in rare territory for this year, with just one other film, Beauty and the Beast. So those would be the two fighting
That came out
for the
this
top.
year?
Yes.
Dude, it's been on Netflix. I feel like it's been on Netflix all year.
Real quick, I wanted to give you guys just a quick snapshot. If you had anything that, we used to do kind of what you've been watching and that type of stuff. I was curious, Dan, if there's anything that you've been watching as you've been trying to catch up with some of the year-end movies. I know you just kind of put out your top 100 comics of 2017, and sometimes once that project gets over, I know you have some time to try to catch up on TV, movies, and stuff of that nature. So have you had a chance to catch up on any 2017 films, and what have been the highlights for you so far in the last month or so?
I did. I recently caught up with 3 films I can talk about real quick. First was Baby Driver, Edgar Wright's movie, which I feel like everyone's seen up to this point, which I heard a lot of people saying, I guess lukewarm was a lot of reaction I saw, but maybe there was more to it. But I really liked Baby Driver. I had a lot of fun with it. I thought it was well directed. It was everything I'd want from an Edgar Wright movie about car chases, and yeah, the characters maybe weren't super dynamic, but I thought they were well done, and I loved all the performances, and I don't know, I had a lot of fun with it and enjoyed it a great deal. I also saw Ingrid Goes West, and I liked that a lot as well. Aubrey Plaza, I'm a huge fan of Parks and Rec, so I know her from that, and I thought her performance was remarkable. I think in a lot of ways it's this movie that she plays this character where she's suffers from some sort of mental illness, which ends up going out into Los Angeles because she wants to befriend this person she falls on, is friends with on Instagram, and everything that ensues afterwards. And I think, that like people talk about what it's talking about social media, but I think ultimately it's more about basically how we treat the mental illness or don't treat it, and the impact that can have. And I thought it was really good. I don't know necessarily if it was saying anything specifically unique, but I think that's okay. It was, I think, just well handled. And lastly was It Comes at Night, which I looked up on Rotten Tomatoes, and the discrepancy between the critic score and the user score was like so dynamic. It was like 50 points off. So I was like going into it thinking it would be something like Under the Skin or some sort of like art house thriller. And it wasn't that at all. Like I saw the director's past film, which was, much more raw than this. To me, it was just an executed, dystopian, almost dystopian, like on the way up, being dystopian thriller, where there's a lot of mystery behind it. And I thought it was well directed, and it was perhaps a little empty. Like there wasn't really much to it beyond the suspense, but as a kind of effective thriller, it worked. I was just I'm not really sure where such a polarizing opinions coming from with that. I was expecting maybe that's why it didn't have that impact with me. I was thinking it was going to be this like utterly slow pace with nothing happening. Like maybe being prepared for that, it didn't seem a slow pace for me because I was thinking of something like, trying to think of something else that would fall along those lines, but yeah. So I still have a lot to catch up with. I'm hopefully going to see The Killing of a Sacred Deer, which I'm looking forward to because The Lobster was my favorite film last year. But I'm setting my sights to the film, and I'm just realizing just the mountains of movies I need to catch up with.
Yeah, for sure. We've seen all 3 of the ones that you had mentioned, and I think Baby Driver is going to stick with me a long time just for the way that they kind of interplayed the music and the beats and things like that. It was so something I've never seen before, at least me personally, and I really enjoyed that. And I thought there were some good performances in there. I think you could have some quibbles here and there with some of the things that happened down on it towards the end. That was kind of what I heard from a lot of people that were doing the reviews as far as some of the decisions that were made towards the end. But I overall really liked Baby Driver. I think we enjoyed Ingrid Goes West more than we thought we were going to going into it, and I think it does have a lot to say on multiple levels. I don't know. It's definitely a capsule of today. You know what I mean? Of what today's, I guess, the centricity of social network and Facebook, Instagram, Twitter, etc. So it'll definitely be a snapshot of this time in history, but it'll be interesting to see how that plays out over time. And I know there's much more, like you said, with the mental illness and some even more important themes that are going on alongside that as well. So it surprised me. I really enjoyed It Comes at Night, but it's been a long time. That one's almost one that I would need to rewatch because I had it rated pretty high over the course of the year just for what I enjoyed. It reminded me a little bit of like a Z for Zachariah or some of those types of films where it's just a slow build and some tense mystery.
Yeah, I like the ending really impacted me. Like it was I know some people have some problems with it, but it doesn't give you a lot of answers, so maybe that's why people had trouble with it. But yeah, I thought it was really well done. It just it was just like a really well directed thriller, which was something I wasn't expecting. So
yeah, I think it's definitely worth a watch. I would recommend it for sure. I think we just have 4 movies that we're going to mention real quick, and I'll get Amanda's quick take on them, and then we'll move on. We don't need to talk about Table 19. We did see that recently, and that is, as far as I'm concerned, not worth watching. Not funny enough to be a comedy, and not interesting enough on any other level. So that was a big disappointment. Not that I was expecting much. Amanda, I was interested to get your take real quick on air here of a film that we saw that was nobody was talking about it. I haven't seen anybody talk about this one, but we rented it just for the heck of it and put it in. What did you think of Jungle?
I told you this before. I think it's everything that not Z for Zachariah.
The Lost City of
Lost
Z.
City of Z should have been. It was definitely a pleasant surprise, even though it wasn't like a pleasant journey that you go through during the film.
Based on a true story.
Yeah, and I think Lost City of Z was too, but
Yes.
this was way better done and way more interesting and engaging, and I liked the ending. I think that a lot of it was satisfying.
So for those of you that don't know what we're talking about, Jungle is following basically these 3 individuals that meet up, and they're just for the heck of it going to go on this.
They're backpacking in Europe, and
Yeah.
then they get coerced to go to like South America or something.
So this guide takes them on this journey, and it turns into a bit of a survival, and part of the group gets separated from part of the other group, and it kind of follows the need to survive and what people will do for each other, etc. But it's definitely some interesting scenes that take place with your boy. Daniel Radcliffe. So Harry Potter in the Jungle. But I think we both enjoyed that one enough to recommend it. Especially if you read the synopsis and it's a type of movie that you're into, I would suggest that one. We watched The Book of Henry. I guess my only take on that one is I don't quite understand the upheaval that people had for that movie. I don't think it's nearly as bad as it was made out to be. What do you think, Amanda?
I don't think so at all. I think it was really heartfelt. I think it had some great moments. I think Naomi Watts had some parts where I didn't like her. But I think the heart of the film, I should say the film had a lot of heart, rather. And I think that it was an interesting premise and also had a happy-ish ending, which I dig.
Yeah, a lot of people had a lot of problems with the last act, and they said it went a lot of different directions that weren't earned or that they didn't like. But I didn't think it deserved quite the hate that it got. I'm not saying it's a great film, but it wasn't as bad as the reviewers and film Twitter said it was. Last couple here, we saw a film called Lady Bird that's making the rounds and getting all kinds of acclaim there with Saoirse Ronan. Amanda, what did you think of Lady Bird?
She was annoying. I don't know. I mean, I think that there was some good stuff with relationships, but I couldn't relate to some of it because I don't know. It was just a difficult situation to put myself in. I don't know. It's
very interesting because I've listened to maybe 4 podcasts about Lady Bird and listened to some people talk about it, and every single person that I've heard talk about Lady Bird brings up word relation or relate, as far as if they personally can relate to what's going on in the film. And it's been about 50-50 between people I've heard that say they can relate to it or people that say they can't relate to it. This is the film from Greta Gerwig, somewhat, I guess, autobiographical, focusing on Saoirse Ronan, who plays a person growing up at a very specific time in a very specific place. And it kind of follows her family and what her desire is, kind of a coming of age, so to speak, and definitely getting a lot of award buzz and going to show up on a lot of people's top film of the year. I thought it was pretty good. I don't know, like you were saying, Amanda, if I can necessarily relate to what's going on necessarily, to her character specifically on a personal level, but I still thought that it was done well. I think the family dynamic is interesting. I think there's interesting things that you get to see from her friends, from her parents, from her sibling, etc. So I thought there was enough there, and it was very impressive for a debut directorial effort from Greta Gerwig. So
I think it had moments that were really good, but
I was
don't think there
surprised
was a
by
payoff.
Roseanne's sister too.
Yeah, I don't.
Metcalf.
I didn't like. I don't want to
She
call it
was
the
in the-
resolution of the film or whatever. I didn't like it. I don't feel like. I feel like there's all this building and all this working towards, and then the payoff wasn't great.
It's an interesting film too for Saoirse Ronan to be in, because there's a lot of parallels you could draw between this and Brooklyn. I know they're completely different films, but they're both somewhat of coming-of-age films in a very specific place and time, and both starring the same person. So I think it's interesting. I think it's worth a watch, definitely, from everybody, and there's a reason it's going to show up on a lot of people's lists. So definitely worth a watch. I'd recommend that one. And the last one I want to highlight before we close out today, I got to, because I've been championing this film on Twitter and stuff, and I want everybody to see it that hasn't, even if they're not going to like it as much as I did. But I loved Brigsby Bear. I don't know what it was about it, but I got to bring it up specifically, especially with all the Star Wars right now, because this is another chance for you to see a little bit of Mark Hamill. But this is a very interesting story of this individual who basically grows up idolizing this cartoon, Brigsby Bear, and the movie kind of goes into why that is. Not really cartoon, I guess. It's more of a...
It's a kid's show.
Yeah, kid's show. But it's very interesting to see where that comes from, why he's obsessed with this show, and kind of what happens when the show...
His life, there's like an upheaval. And
when the show gets canceled, what's going to happen.
Yeah.
So I don't want to give anything away, but definitely an interesting performance from Mark Hamill, and an interesting performance by the rest of the cast, and kind of as we follow this journey to get Brigsby Bear back on air. I think it's worth a watch. Amanda, you're not as high as I am?
I was surprised I liked it as much as I did. I think it's cute, and it does have a lot of heart, and there's some learning moments, and I love like the relationship building and the guy's attitude like the whole time. Like he takes everything with such like grace. It's awesome.
Yeah, I definitely had no expectations going in for this at all, and I guess the reason I say those types of things is because I'm trying to temper people to not necessarily. I don't want to have their expectations go through the roof just because I'm saying I enjoyed the film so much. So they might not enjoy it as much as I did. So just go in with an open mind is why I say that. So, but I would definitely recommend Brigsby Bear to everybody. It's a kind of under the radar. It's out available to rent and do different stuff like that. I'm sure you can get it on Redbox or things like that. So if you have a moment, I would add that to the list as you're kind of choosing things to watch as we wrap up 2017. So that's going to do it for today's episode. Let us know if you like it when we go over the news or when we go over what we've been watching and those types of things, or if you prefer us to stick with our series, because we do have a few of those that are wrapping up and a few of those that are ongoing. We still have a few more video game films to cover to wrap up that series, and we've been making our way through the Kevin Smith filmography, so definitely check those out and let us know how you're enjoying that journey as well. And we'll have some fun stuff coming out in 2018 as we venture into some new places we haven't been before. And, of course, it's also the time of year where we start to wrap up 2017, get our top list going, and then journey into 2018 with our box office results and predictions and our most anticipated films. So it's a fun time of year to be a movie fan. So we'll have a lot of content coming out for you. Dan, anything else that you'd like to advertise, or how can people find out about your big project where you revealed your top 100 comics of 2017?
Yeah, definitely go to Geekcast Radio and check out my top 100 comic list of 2017. I go into basically all the comics that I love, and I think even if you're not a comic fan, there's things to take out, and everything from monthly comics to general graphic novels. There's a lot to, and I'm also working on a special project which I should be releasing soon, that will be debuting in January. That is very inspired by that, as I try to like view comics through a different lens, and I think it's going to be exciting. A lot of people will enjoy it, and hopefully we'll have more reviews, more content like that coming to Geekcast Radio.
Yeah, absolutely. Amanda, how can people interact with you on social media?
You can find me on Twitter at HardCandyMandy, eyes, no eyes.
If you have a question for me, you can direct it at Optimus Solo. I'd enjoy any feedback or comments or questions that you want to send my way. Dan, how can people interact with you on Twitter?
I'm at Movie Revolt.
All right, and if you want to ask Matt where he was today, you can tweet him at FridleyCent, or if you have any general comments for the show, you can tweet at Cinema Geekcast. Otherwise, stay tuned on GeekCastRadio.com or Facebook, and they will keep you up to date with all things Geekcast Radio related that are coming down the pipeline. That does it for this week's episode. Tune in next time for another chance to listen to the Cinema Geeks.